Lies, deception, and manipulation. That is what a lot of people are saying about what's going on with this government right now, energy prices and such like. Now, it's not all bad. They are doing some things that I think some people like, but let's look at these things that really do impact you, because despite all of the promises that energy prices are not going up, and I'll show you examples of that in a minute, they are going up. The energy price cap is going up. Now, let me first jump to a couple of videos which will prove the point, not that you've probably forgotten, that they made these promises that, first of all, the net zero targets with renewable energy is going to bring prices down, and Keir Starmer saying he's going to freeze prices, etc. Now, I've got an example for you, actually. Now, renewable energy can be a good thing because I actually use solar energy myself, and I will show you a screenshot in just a moment. And I'll bring that on screen. But while I'm preparing that, if you could please do subscribe to the channel. Roughly half of the 1 to 2 million of you that watch every single month don't subscribe to the channel. You probably don't think that that really means a big deal, but it means a big deal to me. It would really help me because it helps my channel grow. Then I'll reach a wider audience, etc. I put a lot of time and energy into these videos. No pun intended, because this is an energy video, but I really appreciate it if you do that. So let's take a look at this, shall we? So this is my current... Well, it's a screenshot of my current energy consumption and usage with solar power. I'm producing 7.7 kilowatts of energy. My batteries are charged, it's powering the home, and I'm selling the excess back to the grid. So what's not to love about that? That's actually pretty cool. But what we were told about energy pricing was that they would be frozen and that they would in fact come down. Now, I make no apology for the change in the light here. I've got the blinds open with the sun coming through, and it's about time we see the sun, but it does mean it's going to go dark occasionally. It is on auto ISO, but I don't usually do that. I usually fix it, but by the by. Let's take a look at this first video, shall we? You're looking at the video and not me anyway. I'll mute myself, but this is what Miliband said about net zero, renewable energy, and energy prices, etc. Take a listen to this.
Offshore wind, solar power, offshore wind, nuclear, tidal, hydrogen, carbon capture, an armoury of clean power. Solar panels on your local school, your local housing estate, your community centre, turbines, batteries, thousands of projects across Britain, tackling fuel poverty, warmer homes, lower bills.
Lower bills. That's what you were sold on. That's one of the many things that people were sold on who voted for Labour. And somebody is quite conveniently, there's always a tweet, or post if you insist, there's always a post. If you look further down here, someone's quote posted Keir Starmer back from 2022 and says, "I don't say this lightly, the cost of living crisis is a national emergency. Households struggling to pay their bills need immediate help. With Labour, you wouldn't spend a penny more on energy bills this winter." How is this not outright deception when he said such a thing, and now, of course, they are going up? Because if we jump very quickly over to the Telegraph article over here, you can see that the regulator, Ofgem, has confirmed that the dual fuel bill is going to rise from £1,738 to £1,849, which is about 50% more than consumers were paying before the start of the Ukraine war. So there's obviously lots of things going on here. I've talked about that before, but the average bill is going to rise by over £100 a year. Now, when we jump back to what Keir Starmer said before, now he was quite passionate about this. Now, I'm going to sound rather unusual here. Now, I very often watch people doing different things. Now, there is always a human element involved now and again, and there's a couple of times I've seen this in Keir Starmer when, wait for it, I've actually felt sorry for him, because the two examples I can think of. One, when he was on stage and some guy came up and started throwing confetti on him or whatever it was and jostling him around. That was not acceptable. That's uncalled for. It doesn't matter whether you support him or not. That is not called for. And he looked genuinely terrified. Now, as a martial artist and someone who teaches people to be confident and defend themselves and know how to handle themselves, not be terrified in those situations, it does hurt my feelings when I see somebody that is attacked like that and they look genuinely terrified. I've been attacked before. I was attacked a couple of times. One time I was in China, I was punched in the back of the head. But because I've trained for so long, I just turned around to take up the fight, and it didn't bother me in the slightest. But anyone else is going to be absolutely terrified. So that was one instance. Another one was this one here. I think it was this interview here, but a different part of this interview, where he looked and sounded genuinely gutted for the lady on the phone because she couldn't afford the bills and she got children and obviously with the energy bills and everything else. And this was, again, but it's one of the things that they got them into power. This was one of the things that he was talking about, and he looked genuinely gutted and upset. And that made me feel bad, because I don't like seeing other people feel bad, and that was exactly what happened here. But it's upon all of this that they got voted into power. And so let's have a listen again to what he said here. So despite all of that, let's have a listen to what he said here.
Your circumstances, but I doubt when you hear the energy companies and the government talking about £3,500 possibly for energy bills going up to £4,000. I suspect, like many, many other people, you shudder at that, because these are huge, huge amounts of money, which is why we say under a Labour government we'd freeze those prices. We wouldn't allow them to go up, Ella, because what you're already paying is going to go through the roof. And I don't know how you would cope with that, Ella.
So it may or may not have been the same person he was talking to when I remember seeing this for the first time. But again, like I said, that is, you can see a human side to somebody, but it was based on that. He said, we will not allow them to go up. But to be fair, that was an impossible promise to make, because there's not a lot they can really do about it. If the energy prices on the whole are going up and they are beyond their control, then that's a promise that they shouldn't have been able to make, and they shouldn't have made. But they made that promise and they got into government. And sure enough, now these energy bills are going up. So all the while, it is misdirection and not so much showmanship, as Darren Brown would say. And just on the thought of energy for a moment, I can wholeheartedly recommend Octopus Energy. This is not a sponsored video. I use them myself. It's been the most seamless experience I've ever had with an energy company. And if you want £50 off your bill, then use my link in the description below. You'll get £50. No questions asked. You just switch to them. You get £50. It is an affiliate link for full disclosure, but you'll just get £50 off your bill. And if you want to track how much energy things use in your household to dispel some of these myths, I did a video on that a while ago. I might do another one, but use this device that's on screen now. That's linked below as well. You plug it in, you plug something else into it, and it will tell you real time what power that device is using. It will allow you to keep track of where the energy is being consumed in your house, so you can either turn it off or put it on a timer or all such things. Those will certainly help you in shaving some money off your bills. Things like fridges, but you'll be surprised by some of the things that use up the most power. But like I said, I'll link it below. Go and buy one, and then you can measure up exactly what you think is causing the most energy drain in your house. But now we move to other posts which sort of get my goat a little bit as well, because we look at this post here. This is talking about shoplifting. Now, there's a serious problem with shoplifting across the country. Serious problem. People are filmed routinely, it seems now, daily, walking into and out of a shop, stuffing stuff into a bag. Occasionally, you see a security guard confront these guys, which they're allowed to do. They are allowed to conduct what we sort of loosely call a citizen's arrest. It's not really a citizen's arrest. It's an arrest by a person other than a constable under Section 24A of PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. They can arrest somebody. Contrary to all the myths out there, they don't have to pass the checkout. They don't have to, walk past the last point of payment. They don't have to be out on the street and those kind of things. That's how it used to be done many years ago, because it was easier to prove the intent to steal if they were outside the shop. That's not necessary. It's never been necessary, really, but it's certainly not necessary now. And you can conduct these arrests. But occasionally, these security guards are doing that. They're getting knocked to the floor. They're getting pushed about. And lo and behold, they choose not to do it. And in fact, some of their employers are now telling them rather, to not get involved for fear of getting hurt because of the reprisals and the counterattacks and so on. But with all of that going on the one hand, yes, I agree that there needs to be a lot done to sort this problem out, which is otherwise low-value shoplifting if it's under £200. But then we get posts like this. Now, posts like this are misleading. And I'll tell you why they're misleading. Because we have, with all respect, and I mean no hate, but we have many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people across the country that need an interpreter to be able to understand English. And I mean that with no disrespect, but it's a fact. It is what it is. I know a lot of people have got very strong views on that, but it's just a fact that I'm setting out here. Now, because of that, if those people read this post from the Home Secretary, it says the following on this first arrow bullet point that I'm looking at here. They are going to introduce respect orders. I'll come back to those in a second. And ending immunity for shop theft under £200 to tackle antisocial behaviour and protect high streets. But that is fundamentally wrong, There is no immunity for shop theft under £200. Now, I would forgive some people for reading this and thinking, I didn't know that. I didn't realise that there was immunity for shop theft under £200. Now, that sounds ridiculous. Certainly, if you know that it is actually an offence, it is certainly an offence of theft. It is a theft from the shop. It's an offence of theft, and I'll explain more about it in a second. But for those that don't know that that is absolutely the case, they might read this and think, that's why they're not dealing with these people in the shops, because they've got immunity, because it says here in clear text, immunity for shop theft under £200. But that's just never been a thing. There is no immunity. What they mean, and I understand why they've put the post out, what she means or her team means, what they really mean is that people are getting away with this. They're not dealing with this. And the problem doesn't lie in the law. It lies in the enforcement of that law. Because the law exists. It is an offence and they can go to prison for it. And I'll show you that in a second. But very briefly explaining the offence of shoplifting for goods valued under £200, it is low-value shoplifting, so it is ordinarily to be treated as summary only, meaning it goes to the magistrate's court, meaning you can get 6 months for shoplifting. And that was decided through case law to say, well, actually, under a certain value, it stays in the magistrates. Over a certain value, fine, hear it in the Crown Court. So ordinarily, it is treated summarily and it goes to the magistrate's court. However, there are 2 scenarios that this will indeed go to the Crown Court. One is if an adult defendant is charged with shoplifting, for even if it's low value, they have the opportunity to elect a Crown Court trial because it is an offence of dishonesty, it's an offence of theft. So regardless, it might be £50. Or in one case when I was training many years ago, it was, I kid you not, it was theft of a pair of socks valued at £1 from Primark. That was one of the very first cases I went to at the magistrate's court during my training. Now, theft of a pair of socks for £1, and obviously the guy was convicted and he got a criminal record for theft for £1. Is it worth it? You tell me. But those are offences of theft and they go to the magistrate's court unless you elect a Crown Court trial. So if an adult defendant elects Crown Court trial, they go to the Crown Court under Section 22A of the Magistrates Court Act 1980, subsection 2. Secondly, if a defendant is charged with one or more shoplifting offences and the aggregate value of those individual shopliftings are in excess of £200, then in that case, the court will just go through the normal allocation procedure and may or may not choose Crown Court trial. May still retain jurisdiction depending on the values and what happened, etc., or they may just send it to the Crown Court. And the other one is perhaps if it's included on the indictment for another offence, then they all go to the Crown Court. So if they've got one which is a serious assault and they were shoplifting at the time, then they all go to the Crown Court. And so once something goes to the Crown Court, they all go to the Crown Court. But the whole point of this is, I shouldn't really be having to be explaining this as a barrister on YouTube, but hey, here I am. Please subscribe. I've been in it for 5 years now, believe it or not. But I shouldn't really have to be explaining this. But for a post to come out from the Home Secretary to say they're going to introduce respect orders, which I promised I'd come back to, ending immunity for shop theft under £200. It blows my mind that I have to do this clarification video for the Home Secretary, because this is not a thing. There is no immunity for shop theft under £200. As to the respect orders, this is reminiscent of the old antisocial behaviour orders, or ASBOs, and any police watching, or former police watching, or even special constables. I was a special constable for my voluntary service many, many years ago. We used to hear it from criminals and the like, that these were a bit like trophies and they wanted to gather up many of them and see how many they had. That's how it was at the time. They would brag about how many ASBOs they'd racked up. They were then changed. I think it was 2014 to criminal behaviour orders and civil injunctions and banning orders and all these sorts of things. But now reintroducing them as a respect order, there is the potential problem here for the abuse and misuse of respect orders. What they're going to do is tell you that you've been issued with one of these respect orders because you've been doing something in public that they don't approve of. And if you disobey that, then that becomes a criminal offence. So much like what we've had before, but potentially, could be abused and misused at the same time. Again, not to say it's a bad thing. These things they have to get control of the streets. So I support all of this. I support the respect orders. I support tackling the shop thefts under £200, etc. But it's a little bit misleading in the way that it says it. Now, establishing tougher sentences for selling dangerous weapons to under 18s. Well, there are offences for selling weapons to under 18s. There are already offences, there are already penalties attached to those. For example, for organisations, the sale of knives by retailers to persons under 18. This is under the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 141A. The maximum is an unlimited fine, and you might be confused by the offence range of £500 to £1 million. These are guidelines. All of these are guidelines, but ultimately it's an unlimited fine. And then the court goes through the same procedure, culpability, etc., looking at all these things and works out what sort of sentence there should be. As to individuals, there's a separate guideline here, and I agree this could probably be increased. This is where an individual sells knives to persons under 18. This is tribal only summarily. This is a summary only offence, obviously with a maximum of 6 months custody. And again, the court goes through a procedure here, fines, community orders, or custody, and so on. So yes, that could well be increased. Back to the post over here. So yes, they could look at doing things like that. And this is a relatively new thing. Those who profit from knife sales on social media. Absolutely. I think they should look at that as well. Legally requiring online retailers to report suspicious knife orders. Yes, I suppose, but that may cause a lot of false flags and waste a lot of time. But on the whole, I would support that. But I think it will cause a lot of wasted time. Bringing in life-saving measures to protect women and girls from stalking, come back to that in a second, and the new criminal offence to prevent spiking. And you may look at the work of Barrister Dr. Charlotte Proudman, who's done a lot of work in this area to make this a specified offence. Now, a lot of people in comments to those threads have said, well, this is already an offence to, administer a noxious substance and so on and so forth. But making the act of spiking a drink a specific offence is certainly something that I think everybody should support. So you can check threads out on that as well. As for stalking, well, there are already offences for stalking, and you don't need to be physically present or follow somebody around in the traditional sense of stalking to be convicted of stalking. Just sending lots of emails, making lots of phone calls, even online, sending lots of messages, unwanted messages, and all this sort of stuff. All of those combined can ultimately lead to you being charged with stalking and convicted of stalking. So there are already laws that are in place. So I think really what I'm saying with all of this is what they really need to do is take measures to actually properly enforce the laws that already exist. And so it's a little bit like the offence of assault against a shop worker, because a shop worker is considered more vulnerable than a standard member of the public and so on, because they are there and they can't leave. But again, assault is assault, and they should really be able to prosecute these things and have the power to deal with these things where they are. Much like the shoplifting, they should really be able to just deal with that as it is, without any new specified offence and without any new specific powers or whatever. They should just be dealing with it. But I think because there's so many of them and it's so prevalent, same with mobile phone thefts, car thefts, everything else, they just need the manpower and the resources to deal with it. I think they need properly funded police forces to actually deal with these things. That's what I think. But as for the energy and everything else, I don't know what to tell you. I personally think people that say that they lied to get into government, I think lie is a strong term. They made promises that they shouldn't have made because they couldn't keep those promises, because ultimately it's going to be out of their hands. And these prices going up is what it is. But many people feel disillusioned by that. All I can say is you need to remember that going forward. So let me know what you think to any of this. Thoughts and comments and questions welcome. Please do subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video before you leave. And as always, thank you for watching.